Hello everyone, welcome to UGC NET Political Science classes by Drishti IAS. I am Dr. Ashwati. In the last class, we started with the comparative political analysis approaches. We discussed about institutionalist approach, systems approach and political culture approach. In this lecture, I will be looking up to the political economy approach. Why only one political economy approach? It is because within this approach, you will find various other theories also, political development, modernization, underdevelopment and dependencies, all these things. All these theories are part of the political economy approach. Okay. Here, political economy approach emerged in the 1960s and it grew in prominence in the 1970s. What actually led to the emergence of this political economy approach? It was because after the Second World War, the Western countries in the Western capitalist countries, they had given a kind of a framework of development. They thought that if you follow these parameters, then you can achieve your desired goals. But it did not happen like that. And in the 1970s, you have there were like in the entire 1960s and 70s, there were multiple issues like civil unrest were there in many of the Western countries, the Black Right movement, Vietnam War. Apart from that, there were many campus strikes, various issues were there. And at the international level, you have this Arab-Israeli war that caused the oil shock, stagflation, unemployment, civil unrest, as well as there were many other issues like low economic growth. All these things were there. And at the international level, the bipolar politics were also there. Okay. James O'Connor in 1974 actually termed that the post-war welfare state as being in terminal fiscal crisis. Peter J. Katzenstein, Small States in World Markets, published in 1985, gave a kind of an approach, or we can say that they argued that Katzenstein argued that smaller states with very let's say the smaller economies, they perform well than those big big capitalist countries. In the aftermath of the 1970s economic shock, smaller and more vulnerable European economies appeared to weather the storm better. It means that they were capable of dealing with the economic crisis, the international financial crisis and many other issues rather than these big countries. Here, political development approach. This approach emerged as a result of the decolonization that happened in the Latin American, African and Asian countries. Why? How? The basic idea was that when these countries got independence, the very first and foremost tension among the scholars in the West was that how these countries can achieve political development. Earlier, these countries were under colonialism of European countries. Now, these countries are independent, so they required new tools for analysis. Unlike the European countries, most of these Latin American, Asian and African countries had a traditional economic structure and many of these countries were facing political crisis as well. So, emphasis was on the study of nature of non-Western societies. Theories of modernization emerged, initial origins, and we can say that the ideas of political development or specifically the modernization theories had its own, like let's say that they had taken influences from the 19th century theorists like Henry Maine, Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, etc. If you remember, Max Weber talked about three types of authority like that emerged from the traditional authority, then after you have the charismatic authority and third one being the rational legal authority. This theory actually like the Weberian theory or the ideas of Emile Durkheim and all these theories received setback in the during the two world wars because Europe was in chaos. Later on, it was revived by thinkers like Lipset, S.M. Lipset. His famous book is Political Man, published in 1959, argued that there was a direct relationship between economic modernization and the development of political democracy. He linked economic modernization with that of the political democracy. The more well-to-do a country, the greater the chances that it will sustain democracy. It means that both are corresponding to each other to the extent that if you spearhead this economic modernization, automatically there will be strengthening of democracy as well, or the strengthening of democracy will definitely help the economic modernization led industrialization. This was the idea propounded by Lipset. Lipset's view on liberal democracy, which is linked to the political development. Let's find out like how he has actually given the characteristics of liberal democracy. First point is that wealth softens the class struggle. According to Lipset, if you actually spearhead, or like let's say that when people are having resources, access to resources, they have access to wealth, then it reduces the class struggle. So, it reduces the chaotic situation in the society. Economic security raises the quality of governance. So, it means that obviously when people are having good jobs, they are having good, they have wealth, what will happen that people actually will remain, the people won't resort to violence, crime, etc. Automatically, it will boost the governance. More interest groups to reinforce liberal democracy. According to this idea, when you have a very strong civil society, it helps in building the liberal democracy. Fourth point is associated with education, which inculcates the democratic and tolerant values. When you are educated, like we say that padhe likha hona zaruri hai. Why? Because the education helps in understanding what is wrong, what is right. Okay, so it brings a kind of an idea that it brings more tolerance in the society. It makes the like in the political community more democratic. And I have taken these ideas from a book by Haig. The title of this book is Comparative Government and Politics, an Introduction. Students, if you are more interested in understanding about comparative political analysis, you can read book by Chilcott, you can read book by Daniel Karamani, and from our Indian writer, we have J.C. Johari's book also, as well as this book by Haig. Okay. So, this brings a kind of a, you will get a kind of a or comprehensive understanding about comparative political analysis, how it emerged, the approaches, as well as the recent developments that are there in this field. Apart from Lipset, we have another important thinker, that is Lucien Pai. He gave the idea of political development by identifying three concepts. One is equality, second is capacity, and third one is differentiation. He spoke about the development syndrome. It is a very important one. It was asked in UGC NET examination that who talked about development syndrome. Apart from that, we have another thinker, AFK Organsky. He spoke about 4 stages of political development. His book's name is For the Stages of Political Development, published in 1965. He spoke about 4 stages. First stage is related with politics of primitive unification. Second stage is associated with the politics of industrialization. Third one, politics of national welfare, and fourth one is politics of abundance. Automatically, first you come together as a nation state, then after you spearhead the industrialization or whatsoever, then after you achieve a position of national welfare, and fourth one is the politics of abundance. When you have so much of resources, then how to how to mitigate the challenges or whatsoever challenges that takes place. So, that is the fourth point. It is having some similarities to that of the Rostow's 5 stages of modernization. Lucien Pai identified crises faced by the new states in the third world countries. So, you can find some jumbled up words here, but Lucien Pai identified 6 crises faced by these newly decolonized countries. First one is the legitimacy. First one is the identity, second one is the legitimacy, third one is the penetration, fourth one is the participation, fifth one is the integration, and sixth one is the distribution. So, here answer is A, identity, legitimacy, penetration, participation, integration, and distribution. We have matched the following. In this list, you can find, this is Graham Wallace, okay. In this list, you can see many institutionalist writers, the behavioralist, as well as structural functional analysis. Okay. So, here we have to match the following with that of the books names. So, first one we have here is Lord Bricey, and he has written this book called Modern Democracies. So, A is with 3. Graham Wallace, he has written this book called Human Nature in Politics, B. Third one is Gabriel Almond, automatically C is with 1, that is Comparative Politics or Developmental Approach. And fourth one is Charles E. Merriam. Charles E. Merriam, he worked on this book called New Aspects of Politics, D, here. So, A is with 3, then after B is with 4, C is with 1 and D is with 2. Moving to our next question, and this is an assertion and reason. Here, let's read this first assertion. A student of comparative politics should study the behaviors of voters. Second reason given by in this question is a student of comparative politics has to deal with the entire political systems. Both statements are correct, as well as R is the correct explanation of assertion. Why? It is because obviously, like the students of like comparative political analysis, we have to study the behavior of the voters, as well as we have to deal with the entire political systems. If not, then how we are going to understand the why? Like by studying the behavior of voters, you cannot just, like what we call it as, we cannot stay behind the wheel of ignorance or the original position or something. We have to deal with different political systems, how it can be applied there, right? Like what sort of voters, like the voters behaviors we have to understand with different, like there are different types of political systems, we have to apply them. And then only we will get a kind of a comparative way that, okay, in this political system, like, voters have this type of behavior. In this political system, voters actually behave in a very different tone. So, answer is A. Both A and R are correct, and R is the correct explanation of A. Modernization theory. Very important thinker we have here, that is W. Rostow. And this question was also asked in UGC NET examination many years back, and it is highly possible that that question can also be repeated. He spoke about 5 stages here. First is the traditional society, more or less agrarian society, or we can say that that is a society that has very lower mobility. People are not highly skilled. Most of the people have, like, they have only one way of, earning resource, like money, like through agriculture or some producing something out of the agriculture products, like that. Second stage, the establishment of the preconditions for takeoff. Here takeoff means industrialization. You have to make certain conditions for the takeoff. Then the takeoff stage happens. It means that you achieve to the level of industrialization. Then after drive to maturity, it means that you are actually going for a kind of an elevation in your economic growth. Epoch of high mass consumption. It means that it leads to high consumption. Now you have, or you are producing everything from pins to cars in your country. Now it leads to people, like, they have different choices. Something like, Thomas Hobbes had said that human desires are insatiable. So we have that consumerism actually increases in the final stage. It is something similar to that of Organsky's idea of abundance. Now you are actually you have already achieved the industrialization. Now it is the period of mass consumption. Samuel P. Huntington, he had a very different view. He criticized the modernization theory. For him, the political development is not synonymous with that of the economic modernization. For him, there needs to there is a need for strengthening the institutions. Sometimes, let's say that you are spearheading more social and economic modernization. People, like the people's demands are increasing. So, whether this institution is capable to cope up with it or not, if not, then it will lead to political decay, chaos, strikes, violence, and many other issues. So, how to cope up with it? It is like you have to first strengthen the institutions, which is very important one according to Samuel P. Huntington, and he gave the idea of political decay. That's why he said stable authoritarian system is better than unstable democracy. Another, match the following. So, here we have Samuel P. Huntington, obviously associated with the idea of political decay. So, we have A here. Robert Dahl is associated with the idea of polyarchical democracy. So, C, oh sorry, polyarchical democracy is associated with the idea of Robert Dahl. Kenneth Boulding, he spoke about political simulation. And Fernando H. Cardoso spoke about associated development dependent. D here. Next, another match the following. We have from here, you can see the description of political development and the names of the scholars are given there. And you can find this, the list of these things like the description as well as a list of scholars in the J.C. Jory's book as well. The first one is political modernization. Obviously, it is associated with the idea of Lipset. So, A is with 2, then after B is with 1, and C is with 4, and D is with 3. So, you can see it here. Political modernization is associated with the ideas of S.M. Lipset. Building of democracy is associated with the ideas of J. Ronald Pennock. Operation of nation state is associated with the idea of Edward Shills. And administrative and legal development is associated with the idea of Talcott Parsons. Very important. Very importantly, Edward Shills is a thinker who is associated with the ideas of primordial nationalism. And it's very important, just I am giving you a very additional information, and because like when you will be studying about nationalism, you come across theories like primordialism, perennialism, modernism, instrumentalism. Edward Shills is associated with the ideas of primordial nationalism, primordial view or primordial approach to nationalism or theories of nationalism. So, your like administrative and legal development is associated with the ideas of sociologist Talcott Parsons. Political modernization with Lipset. Building of democracy is associated with the ideas of Ronald Pennock. Operation of nation state is associated with the ideas of Edward Shills. And D, administrative and legal development is associated with the ideas of Talcott Parsons. Next, again we have match the following. Robert Dahl. Have you ever noticed that UGC NET examination, you often come across the ideas of Robert Dahl. They keep on asking about Robert Dahl. So, it means that he is a very important thinker from the perspective of UGC NET examination. You have Robert Putnam, Francis Fukuyama, Almond and Powell. So, you have to match the list 1 with the list 2. So, here A is with 4. Robert Dahl has written this book called Democracy and Its Critics. B is with 3. Civic Traditions in Modern Italy was written by Robert Putnam. Francis Fukuyama is associated with the end of history debate. So, Francis Fukuyama here is C, and Civic Culture by Almond and Powell. Very important ones. Francis Fukuyama was a student of Samuel P. Huntington. It's an additional information. Okay. Next, underdevelopment and dependency theory. So, if you remember that political development approach emerged from the Europe to find some new analytical tools to understand the political development in Afro-Asian and Latin American countries. Underdevelopment and dependency theorists, they emerged from the Latin American and African countries. They actually questioned the modernization theories, they developed the political development approach given by these Western thinkers. Modernization theory was subjected to intense political and intellectual criticism. It was a reaction to Eurocentrism, or the ideas of provincializing Europe as mentioned by Dipesh Chakravarti, and Marxist theories of imperialism, which also had internal biases because Marxist theories of imperialism had a kind of an idea that was very Eurocentric. They did not look up to the plight of the people in the Asian, African and Latin American countries. It focused on African and Latin American states in a very coherent manner. A.G. Frank or Andre Gundre Frank is one of the most important theorists associated with the dependency theory. He gave a pyramidal structure, the relation between the metropoles and the satellite. So, metropoles are the, let us say that the core countries, these are the metropoles, they are the European countries, or let us say that those in the northern hemisphere, the developed countries, and here you have the local metropole, and then after you have the satellite. Satellite countries are those in the Latin American, especially Latin American countries. These countries are actually what we say the producers of the raw materials. They are not getting any benefit out of it. They are being accumulated from the local metropoles that are there. They act as the intermediaries. Then after you have the metropoles that are the countries at the northern hemisphere who are actually reaping the maximum benefit by exploiting the satellite states. Satellites are the agriculture laborers and the small farmers in the rural regions of the periphery. Like this is the peripheral countries, this is the core country. Local metropoles, local centers of capital accumulation. Then after you have core, that is the centers of surplus extraction, and they develop by exploiting the states in the satellite, that is those countries in the peripheries. Next prominent thinker was Samir Amin. He gave the model of the autocentric economy and model of peripheral economy. So, here in the autocentric economy, he is talking about the European or the northern hemisphere countries where they have more like the agriculture sector and industrial sector, both are actually complementing each other, and it actually gives a good way of development. But in the peripheral countries, the poorer countries where their industrial sector is very smaller, their agriculture sector is larger, but these countries are producing the luxury goods and it is not giving any sort of benefit to these poor countries. And he has written this work, Accumulation on a World Scale, published in 1974, Unequal Development, published in 1976, and Eurocentrism, published in 1989. These are the principal works by Samir Amin. Then after we have Immanuel Wallerstein's world system theory. He did not speak about core and periphery, just only about core and periphery. Rather than that, he brought a third tier also, that is, or we can say an intermediate circle also, and that is semi-periphery. So, you have first one is the core, second is the semi-periphery, and third one is the periphery. And he also gave a historical approach about his world system theory. Unlike, although we say that we cannot completely say that that world system theory is part of the dependency theory, because dependency theory was reacting towards the countries that have got the freedom from the colonialism and what problem they are facing right now. But Wallerstein's theory is having an historical approach. Here, core countries are having the principal characteristics. I have actually taken this image from the Baylis and Smith book, and the core countries have this characteristic like democratic government, high wages, they import the raw materials, export the manufactured products, high investment, and welfare services are very highly like present in the core countries or the developed countries in the, especially in the northern hemisphere, okay, northern hemisphere. Then you have the semi-periphery. So this is the core, this is the semi-periphery, and this is the periphery, okay. In the semi-periphery, authoritarian types of governments you can witness there. They export the mature manufactured goods as well as raw materials. They import manufactured products as well as raw materials. They have low wage structure and they have low welfare services as well. At the peripheral level, they have non-democratic governments. They export raw materials, import the manufactured goods. Why they are importing manufactured goods? Because they don't have industrialization, or base of industrialization is not present in the peripheral countries. They import manufactured products. They actually produce below subsistence wages. They can produce only those things which can actually merely sustain their life, and no welfare services are available in the peripheral countries. Although in semi-peripheral countries you find low welfare services. So students, in today's class we have discussed about various aspects of political economy approach. It's very important. In every UGC NET examination, you will find 1 or 2 questions related to political economy approach, and political economy approach is not something a singular one. It has various other approaches also associated with it, like political development, modernization, as well as you have this underdevelopment and dependency theories. You have to read them, as well as you have to keep an eye on all the important political concepts. So students, thank you for watching my video. See you in another lecture. Bye.